Hello folks, this is an example of an incremental SMP special item. This is not an exact special item, and this is not a how-to video. I will go slightly in depth with some of the Datapack code, however, it's not the best way you can do it. There are better ways with custom enchants and things, and additionally, there are far better people for explaining how to make Datapacks than me. Now, if you want to see what this example item is, then here you go. If I shoot this villager and it actually hits the mob, then I will get given regeneration free. If I shoot the ground, I will not. If I shoot the sky, I will not get regeneration free. I will only get the regeneration if I actually hit a target, like you can see there. Next is the setup for the player ID. This is an important part of the code to make sure the correct player in a multiplayer setting will be given the effects. The first player to join a server will be given the ID of 1, the second player ID of 2, and so on. This works by creating two scoreboards, one called player ID, which stores the players and their individual IDs, and another one called player ID tracker, which is used to track the previous ID. This command runs all of these commands as any player who does not have the tag ID assigned. These commands then add 1 to ID counter in the player ID tracker. So for the first player, ID counter is 0, this command is run, it is now 1. Then the player's player ID is set to what the ID counter currently is, so it is set to 1 for the first player. And then they are tagged ID assigned, meaning they will never run this section of commands again. The second player would not have the tag ID assigned, so this function is run. Adding 1 to ID counter, making it 2, then their player ID is set to ID counter, so their player ID would be set to 2, and then they are tagged ID assigned. Next is the setup for the scoreboards and team for the rest of the functions and commands in the Datapack. In this section of the Datapack, the first command to be run is scoreboard objective remove used example bow. This cleans up the Datapack, that's all it does. Next, the scoreboard objective is re-added. This objective is called used example bow and is minecraft.used minecraft.crossbow. This ticks up every single time any Minecraft crossbow is used. Next, a team is added called armor stands, and it is modified so its collision rule is set to never, meaning any entity in the team armor stands will not collide with any other entities. Now that the Datapack is set up, we can actually start to run some of the more complex functions. When a player shoots a bow, the scoreboard created earlier, called used example bow, will tick up by 1. When the scoreboard equals 1 or higher, and a player is holding a crossbow with the custom data example bow 1B, like I am, when they shoot the bow, multiple commands will be run through a function. If I do /tick dep, you can see multiple things have happened. Firstly, 2 things have appeared under player ID. This is this arrow and this armor stand. They are given the same ID in the scoreboard as the player who shot them. Secondly, if I get the data of this arrow, you can see it has the tag example arrow. Additionally, this armor stand has the tag example stand. Finally, this armor stand is made to ride this arrow. If I do tick step, you will see that. The armor stand is now riding the arrow, meaning it will follow it. Normally the armor stand would be invisible, however in this case it is not. If I do another tick step, you can see the armor stand continues to ride the arrow, and both are still in the player ID area. Now, when this arrow hits the villager, the arrow will stop existing. The armor stand will detect that it is no longer riding an entity, and thus will give the player with the same player ID as it regeneration. You can see that the arrow has now disappeared because it has hit the villager, removing it from the player ID list, and the armor stand will now have realized it is no longer riding an entity. This means it will give me regeneration. The armor stand then deletes itself. If an arrow is shot and it misses, it does not hit an entity, then the arrow will not be deleted. Instead, it will detect that it is in the ground, right here. The arrow now has NBT data of in-ground 1B. This means on the next tick, it will delete itself and the armor stand before the armor stand has a chance to do any of its things. You can see both have now been deleted, and thus I did not get given the regeneration effect. Finally, an arrow trail is given to the arrow by summoning particles at any arrow with the tag example arrow, which if you remember was given earlier. Thank you for watching me explain this example item. Again, this is not necessarily the way I would recommend doing it. Instead of using item tags, it is actually better to use custom enchants. Down below I have linked to some additional resources that would help you make data packs if you really want to. However, if you just want to play around with cool items, then you should come join Incremental SMP. Applications in the description. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.